John Baldwin is a strong Christian father and nonprofit director turned author of the riveting true story, Almost Gone. Written by John and his daughter, Mackenzie Baldwin, Almost Gone recounts the harrowing and suspenseful effort John and his wife Stephanie made to prevent Mackenzie from carrying out her secret plan to fly to Kosovo, where she believed she would marry the man who had won her heart through the internet. The Baldwins learned of Mackenzie's plans only days before her departure, after wondering what had caused such a dramatic shift in her personality and interests. Mackenzie had no idea Kosovo was a hotspot for human trafficking and that she had been heavily manipulated by a stranger. Almost Gone is a vital book for understanding and preventing the real dangers faced by naive youth who often have unlimited access to social media where such predators abound. John, welcome to Triumph Talks. It is great to see you again.
Oh, it's good to see you too. Thank you. I've been looking forward to the time.
Yeah, I'm trying to think how long ago it was that we first met.
It was like 2017,
Yeah,
2016, 2017.
yeah, I
Uh,
think so.
and you were a major inspiration for me to even write the book. So
Oh,
really owe
well,
you a
I
great
think you
deal for
were on
this.
the path, but I helped you to get it done.
Hmm.
Not the publishing part, but definitely get the
Yeah.
writing part done and getting Mackenzie involved,
Hmm.
which has been great. Yeah, so it's been wonderful to see. So your book came out, what year did it was it
We
released?
published in November of 2017.
Okay, yeah. So it's been a little while, and
Hmm.
it's been a joy to watch it succeed. I know that you and your daughter have done a lot of speaking, and you've been featured in the media and other places because you have such an important message. And so I'm excited to talk to you about your book on the show today. Let me start with the first question,
Okay.
and that is if you could go into a little more detail about what inspired you to write this book.
The story was almost miraculous when we came out of it. When we came out of the time of Mackenzie um, being manipulated by this man and almost being lured overseas, and being able to save her in the way that we did was just, it was nothing short of a miracle that it worked. And I really began reflecting as time went on, after that was over. It's like, I wanted to be able to capture what happened for my family, for Mackenzie and for the boys, and just for legacy, for them to know in our worst crisis, this is what we did. We leaned on our faith. We leaned on each other. We handled it with love, and to honor what the Lord did for us. I just felt like it was important of story, that it was important to capture it. Secondly, I had talked to Mackenzie, as she began through her recovery. I was saying maybe there's a way someday that you can pay this forward, and a way that she can move on, move past it. And the book was very instrumental in doing that. The original plan was to print a few, maybe 100 copies at the very, very most, and pass them out to some friends and some family, and that'd be it. It ended up being more than that, but I've been just satisfied with that. And that was the main inspiration for doing it. It was really more for the family, and then the Lord took it into a different direction to become a really important piece that's helped a lot of people over the
Mhm.
years.
Yeah, I would say that it's an important tool for especially parents, because we need to be aware of what our children are being subjected to in social media, because that's where she found this man that was in
Mhm.
Kosovo, who originally she thought he was in New York, but by the time the truth came out, she was already believing he was this amazing person, and it was on a social media. I think it was a kind of almost like a dating website. We'll just say that that the detail is in your book, but
Mhm.
and even for anyone, we can all be catfished on social media, and I think
Mhm.
that that's a topic that needs to be addressed and the most powerful way to address it is through your story where you almost lost her, because she certainly would have been trafficked had she gotten on that plane, which she had every intention of doing until
Yeah.
you were miraculously alerted to that. So,
Well, it certainly
yeah,
is a relevant. It's certainly a relevant issue. The latest stats that we looked up is for kids who are 17 and under, fully 50% of kids under 17 talk to somebody on the internet that they don't know.
yeah.
It's something that kids don't really worry about because there's a distance between a screen and themselves,
Mhm.
and they really underestimate the risks they're taking of engaging into a relationship. I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with talking to somebody online, but when you go past that point of making it a relationship, it's a very dangerous thing, and kids seriously underestimate that risk, and they
Yeah,
seriously overestimate their ability to manage that risk if they fall into it,
yeah.
because they're very comfortable with it, and
Mhm.
so it's a cautionary tale
Mm,
that is rings true today.
for
Um,
sure. Yeah,
one,
I
one,
don't think
one
it's
last
gotten
point.
any
This was
better.
an old website, Melanie, that she used. It was called Omegle, but we spoke to a group uh, just a month ago
Mhm.
and asked kids. This site has been closed, and thought it was pretty much gone. But we spoke to a group of kids that were high school students, and 80% of this class that was there knew about that website, were actively using it. So
Really? Wow.
it's still, uh, and if it's not that one, it's another one
Yeah,
that you get into. So
there's so
just have to be
many
careful.
now. The
That's our
concept of the site roughly is definitely very popular. Well, I think that this, is a great segue into the next question, and we can dive into it a little deeper, and
Mhm.
that is, what do you hope people will take from reading your book?
That's a good question. The book is multifaceted, and and you can read it. You can read it as a parent, and read it as well. This is what happened. This is how I guard against these things from occurring to my daughter. The online relationship, um, the dangers of falling prey to different faiths. In our case, Christianity versus Islam. um, you can read it as a student, and you can see students see themselves in Mackenzie because she was very outgoing and normal,
Mhm,
or you could view it from a faith-based standpoint, or
mhm.
just as a father. So when I originally wrote it, I the hope was that they would be able to that we would be able to help a girl to be able to look at this and say, if it can happen to this family, it can happen to any family.
Yeah,
um, with Mackenzie, she was not shy. She was not. It wasn't a girl that was had a lack of friends, or
yeah.
had a lack of attention, or
Mm.
was demure or intimidated in any way. She was the exact opposite. If there was anybody that I thought would not fall for this, it meant her. and
Which
and that
makes
was
it such a good story because it can happen to anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one thing that I think people can take away from this, that there's safety in look at this like, well, it couldn't happen to us because, of that, or it couldn't happen to us because of that. And for the most part, our story kind of takes all those those things away.
Mhm. Mm. Yeah.
And so I think that's one thing we could read. The
Yeah.
other, and this is what's resonated over the years as a father, is that I think that a lot of dads take away is how to deal with a child that turns us back on everything, all
Mm.
every value, everything that you thought you taught them, and they turn them back on all of it. And how do you deal with that?
Yeah.
And I've worked with a lot of dads over the years that have rebellious kids, or have kids that are in drugs, or have kids that are doing things that are outside of their mores that they set with their family. And
Right.
it is so you get so angry when that's happening, and you want to
Yeah.
fight back. And the book is written, it was unintentional, but I just wrote it the way it happened. That's exactly what I did. I mean, I was just fighting back on all of it as
Yeah, the way
hard
that
and as
you were
loud and
handling her,
forcefully as I could,
yeah,
particularly on her her conversion from Christianity to Islam in the course of this year, being manipulated by this man.
right.
So to be able to transition from this anger and realizing that I was, for me in my journey, I was really making it more about myself and
Hmm.
how that reflected on me as a dad, as a Christian,
Oh, interesting.
as a leader, as whatever. I mean, it was really, really embarrassing as a father. And when I really came to realize that and realize I was making it more about me
Hmm.
than her, that was a real shift in the way that I view things. And secondly, um, to be able to realize that I need to love her unconditionally.
Wow.
And that is, if there's one thing that came away that helps dads now, is that I just learned to love her where she was at. I didn't like where she was.
Hmm.
She wasn't where she was supposed to be, but I need to love her anyway. And because I was putting conditions on that, and I will love you if you turn your back on this. I will love you if you do. Once I was able to let that go, it's like, okay, I don't like any of it, but I'm gonna love her anyway. It changed everything in the way that I viewed her. And I think that being able to maintain that bridge, that relationship with her through this, and the term I use is I don't blow the bridge up on my end, that over this
Hmm.
gap between us, this
Hmm.
gulf, and I'm not gonna terminate that bridge on my side. When she was ready to come back,
It was
she
still
was able
there.
to. And that's how we were able to restore our relationship with our family.
Yeah.
So, that has really helped a lot of fathers in my ability and Stephanie and I's ability to work with parents around the world who deal with kids who are prodigals. And finally, with Mackenzie's case, just be able to point out the red flags that she ignored, the things that she very effectively writes, this is what I was doing, this is what I was seeing, this is what I was thinking, and I knew it was wrong, but I ignored it because of this. And it took a it took a great deal of courage for her to write that, and as candidly as she did. And girls read it and like, wow, that could be me. And
Yeah, I think
so
I don't remember if I was talking to her or if you mentioned to me, but when you were speaking to very large gatherings, I think in various churches, that after she would speak, some girls would come up and say, that is me." Like, that for the first time, they recognized what was actually happening in their lives just from hearing her or reading the story.
mhm,
Um, that not only could it be them, but it is them, and they don't realize it until they hear her story,
yeah,
so but I love that you're talking about not just the problem of this manipulation and the danger, but just the idea that when our children aren't doing what we want them to, how do we handle that? Because
mhm,
I think that is probably the biggest epidemic in the world right now. Um, and we won't go in all the rabbit holes and trails of why, it would be
mhm,
an interesting conversation for
mhm,
sure. But the fact of the matter is it's really happening. That so many kids are turning from the traditions and the teachings of their families, and maybe they just it's probably part of that age, but I think that the freedom that they have with technology in our world today, more and more parents are struggling with that, and they really need those answers. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. Well, I have your book on my shelf right here,
mhm.
and what I've done is I've actually picked out some excerpts that I'd like to share with you and just have you maybe expound a little bit on the various parts that I've selected,
Okay,
and of course, if you have anything else to say along the way. So let
all
me
right.
grab that. Now, the first excerpt written by Mackenzie. So as we
Mhm,
mentioned, at the beginning. This was a combined effort of you and Mackenzie working together, which is so wonderful because, like you said, we get into her mind and she's able to share what was happening, what she was thinking at the time, and then we get to see your side of the experience. So this
So
is the
so
this
Melly,
first.
before you say that, I just
Yes.
wanna I think it's important for your listeners to know that the reason why we did that was 100% you. And whenever we met for the very first time and talked about, I explained this story to you on how to, get coaching from you on how to write the book. The very first thing you said to me was, "I think you should write this with Mackenzie." And I
Mhm.
said, "There's no way." And but the more I thought about it, and you told me this will be life changing for you and for her. It'll be very healing, and it was. I would have
Yeah.
never ever considered doing it if you hadn't done it. And so thank you.
Thank you
Um,
for mentioning that. One of my biggest platform or campaign, I don't know what to call it, is really the power of healing that comes from discovering, writing, and sharing our stories in that process. And so you were able to go on that healing journey side by side
mhm,
and heal together. So anybody watching, I just hope you know that your story matters, and working on it with a loved one where possible is a great way to come to understand each other better. So
it
I love that.
it healed our family, so
It did.
it was very
Aw.
very important. So thank you for that. That was very
Yeah.
wise,
Oh,
and I
I'm
appreciate
so
you for that.
so happy to hear that. It makes me feel wonderful. Try not to cry. So, yeah, and I got to work with Mackenzie as she wrote. I was right
Mhm,
there with her through a lot of it, and that was neat. So I got to know her too,
mhm,
which was really fun. All right. So this is Mackenzie kind of introducing us to this situation that she was in. And so um, Madison is a friend of hers that she was hanging out with at the time.
mhm,
So she says, when Madison first showed me the social media site, I liked it because it was unpredictable and had an unusual concept. The website offered a chat roulette with people from all over the world. Omega randomly connected people, giving them the opportunity to either have a conversation through the video chat like Skype or just be able to see the other person and type messages back and forth. Madison and I liked how easy it was to move on from people and how they could move on from us. So this was like early. Everybody's like swipe left, swipe right. Well, this was
mhm.
like the precursor to your common dating apps, I think. So if we decided we weren't interested in someone, we simply clicked the next button and a new person popped up. The site's tagline, "Talk to strangers," sounded like fun. And
Mhm.
though I'd grown up like all of my peers with parents and adults saying, "Don't talk to strangers," this seemed different. We were talking to people from the safety and privacy of our own homes. They didn't know where we were, and they couldn't find out. It wasn't like we were meeting them for real. Besides, we had all the control to swipe past anyone we didn't like, and no personal information was shared. Nothing bad could happen, or so I thought.
Yeah, it's very innocent, and that tagline, for kids, it's just a pastime that they'll sweep through. And here, Mackenzie described that, and the website is there today with the same tagline, and there are
Wow.
others that are just like it. Chat roulette. There's many that are like this that are not
Mhm.
dating sites. They're just for you just to introduce people. But we don't have a picture of the perpetrator in the book, but we have a picture of him,
Mhm.
and and he is extremely handsome,
Mhm.
like a model, and but
Assuming it really
yeah,
is him, which it could very well be, but a lot of times people are just going and getting pictures of models and saying, "This is me," and
she actually ended up videoing him, and no, that
yeah,
was
that
him.
was him, yeah.
For
Well,
sure
that would
was.
make it all the more effective for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
as their relationship progressed, they went from this chat roulette to Facebook to Skype, and
Mm,
were able to talk to
yeah.
each other a
So
great
suddenly
deal.
he wasn't a stranger to her anymore. At least he
But
didn't feel
the
like it.
FBI calls these guys Romeos, and
Mm,
because they are, he was Islamic, but I mean, this guy was could have lived next door to us in Plano, Texas.
mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
extremely good looking guy. So when they're going through and you see, guys my age on there, you're just moving on, or some weirdo that you're just moving on. But when she saw him, it's like, for a 17-year-old senior in high school, it's like, wow, and so, that's the hook.
Yeah. It
And
was very, very powerful hook. There's a little you have some little sidebars in the book,
Mhm.
which I love. So the next thing I picked out is just a little sidebar that says, "I never could have guessed that this person could pull me in and manipulate my thoughts of myself, my culture, and even my God." So,
Yeah.
this of course her looking back at what he really did.
Well, it doesn't start that way. And
Mhm.
if a stranger, you meet a stranger like that, and he said, "Hey, I want you to convert to Islam, and I want you to come to Kosovo," that conversation would have lasted 15 seconds.
Mhm.
But it
But
was a
that's
very
what was
slow.
happening by the end of it.
Yeah, it's a very
Yeah.
slow, patient
Mhm.
investment of time. That's very deliberate
Mm.
and very calculated, and not unusual, for girls to get involved with things like this. And they mistake being manipulated with a relationship because they were able to invest hours, hours and hours on this. But they'll often have 4 or 5 girls that they're doing this with,
Yeah.
and that's just their job. I work,
It's
you
their
work
job.
40 hours a week, and they do too, and that's what they're doing.
Yeah, it's incredible. So I have another one with Mackenzie, and then I'll start to read some from you. But I think it's nice to kind of get the foundation, of the
Mhm.
of the situation. After meeting Aadam on Omegle and accepting his Facebook friend request, I continued to chat online with him for over the next few weeks. Based on the photographs he shared on Facebook, it didn't seem like he actually lived in New York. When I asked Adam if he really lived there, he admitted that he was actually from Kosovo in the Balkan region of Europe. The fact that he had lied to me about where he lived should have been an immediate red flag, but I wasn't too concerned about it. We were nothing more than acquaintances at that point, and I was fascinated that he lived such a unique and different life from mine in the United States. I wanted to learn more about him and where he lived. Initially, it was more like we were pen pals, and that's really what our relationship was for a while. We messaged each other on Facebook and made small talk in the beginning. Then, as we became more familiar and comfortable with each other, we shared details about our lives, such as our future plans, hopes, and dreams, and even stories about our families. Our conversations were fun and enjoyable because we felt so comfortable communicating with each other. After only a few weeks, it seemed like I'd known him forever.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, um, it's very exotic and exciting and enticing and safe.
Yeah, just seems safe, and that's the problem with the social media is it can seem so safe, and yet we see so many who are lured away because of it. All right,
Mhm.
so now we're going to get a little bit of what you have to say. Okay. All right. So a local speaker named Smokey John Reeves, who owns a barbecue joint near Love Field Airport in Dallas, had been giving unvarnished spiritual advice to men in the Dallas Fort Worth area for many years. And by the way, I've been to he's got a restaurant called Smoky Joe's where
Uh-huh.
he's got people, he does a Bible study. I've been to that. So I've
Mm.
met him.
Wow.
At this point, and I'm just kind of jumping around a little bit just to
Mhm.
kind of get some of the context. So at this point, I was very much absorbed in my own problems, but now I took notice and listened closely as Smoky John finished his story. I'm just going to love you where you're at, Smoky John recalled the man saying. And with that simple statement, God had delivered the message I needed to hear. I needed to love Mackenzie where she was, regardless of where it was. I couldn't understand what she was doing or why she was doing it, but it wasn't about me. I went home and told Stephanie that from then on, I was going to love Mackenzie where she was, no matter where that was. I was going to love her unconditionally, Muslim or Christian, circus clown or animal trainer, and it changed everything for me.
It allowed me to let go of a lot of anger and to focus on what was important. It was the biggest life lesson of my life. I think If you'd have asked me anywhere along the way before that, do you love her? I would have said yes.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until then I realized that this anger that I had with this was really in the way of me being able to do that in a Christ-like way.
Mhm.
And, or even in a fatherly way. It's I'll take the faith part out of it. It really doesn't really matter if you're Christian or
Mhm.
Jewish or Islam or agnostic. It doesn't matter. Um, love is love, and so that it really was something that I was able to hold on to that really really resonated with me, and it has helped me immensely since then. But
Yeah.
without that being able to focus on when I mean, I'm not saying I never got mad or upset,
Yeah.
but I was able to come back, but that became a true north for me that when things got really, really rocky and you just want to throw your hands up, it's like, okay, I've had enough. Just forget it. I mean, it was just go if that's what you want to do, or whatever she was doing. We didn't
Yeah, you
know.
didn't
Like,
know at
maybe
that
she was
point, you
just
just knew.
rebelling on everything.
I think it's important for the viewers to know that, up to this point, you had been watching her dramatically change
Mhm,
in so many ways, and rejecting the religion that you raised her in, and embracing one that was very opposite, and bringing that into the home. I know at one point, I don't think I picked this excerpt out, but I know at what point it was really becoming disruptive for your whole family, and she seemed to
mhm.
be trying to influence her brothers, and so I think we can all understand where your frustration would come, you know?
Yeah.
And I know that you talked about this a little earlier, and I guess I just managed to pick out the part of the book where you got
Mhm,
that inspiration, and of course, Smokey John, I'm like, "Oh, I've been there." That's so cool
mhm.
to see him get that little, recognition, but,
Yeah,
yeah.
you bring a good point, Melanie. 'Cause the book is written, and then the way it laid out, we didn't know what was happening. We were just seeing changes in her
Mhm.
behavior and movement to Islam, or these behaviors that she was doing it was just baffling of what she was doing and the decisions she was making. We had no idea what it was. It wasn't until the very, very last minute that we realized that there was even anybody behind it at all.
Yeah,
And so at the
yeah,
point that I wrote that, when I listened to this Smokey John play, all I knew was that she was rejecting anything and everything that we had taught her, and was fighting us on everything, and we had no idea why.
yeah,
And so there was just a lot of emotions that were just flying around. But that, and any parent runs into the same thing with their kids that are maybe going into drugs or going into alcohol or going around with the wrong crowd, or being sexually promiscuous, or whatever, or any of the above. You see the same thing, and
yeah,
and you
you
feel the
do.
same emotions.
Mhm.
And I think this little talk, this loving where it's at, I think was really important for me. If I
Yeah.
may, just real quickly, I
Yeah.
did a Bible study on this,
Oh,
and on this
yeah.
statement. When Peter denied Jesus and betrayed him, he restored him 3 times.
Mhm.
And it took him 3 times to say, Peter, do you love me? And in the very last version of that, where Jesus did that, he met Peter where he's at. He changed his verbiage to match Peter's, because Peter couldn't meet. He felt so guilty he couldn't do that. So
Wow.
you may want to edit that completely out,
No,
but
I love it. I'm keeping
um,
that. I'm very
it
much a Christian, and I love to talk about those things
okay.
in everything I do, so I love that. What a powerful example of, because it might feel very, counterintuitive to maybe go where they are, especially if where they are feels dangerous or, so wrong, and,
Mhm.
but to see the greatest teacher of us all
Yeah.
set the example of doing that. I
Well, you
think
don't have to like it or even agree with it,
yeah,
but
yeah,
you can love him anyway.
I
And
love that. Yeah, love that. So the next part, this is, you begin by talking about someone named Scott, who was a friend of yours that,
mhm,
had some important information to give you.
mhm,
So it says, Scott once again paused. I could tell he was still searching for a way to tell me what he knew. Finally, he said, I don't know how else to share this other than just to tell you straight up, John. I'm sorry to tell you this. Mackenzie is planning to leave the country and marry a Muslim guy she has met online. I think he's in Albania. She's planning to leave the country in the next 2 weeks and has instructed anyone who knows not to tell you until she gets there. I was stunned. What? I'm sorry, what did you say? Scott repeated it. Mackenzie is planning to marry a Muslim guy she met online. She's planning to leave the country without telling you guys. She's planning to leave in 2 weeks. I'm sorry to tell you this, John, but we felt like you had to know. So, this is the moment when you finally found out what was going on. And do you want to talk about that, kind of how that felt, and what you did at first?
Yeah. I recall how that felt when I got that call from him, and it was like I think I'm writing the book that it was like a gun going off to your ear too close, and it was just a shock. One, it was the first time that we realized once the shock wore off and really began to sink in what was happening. My first thought was, I can't believe that she would do this, that she would leave us. The other thing I realized is that it really began to make sense what was happening. I mean, we could not. This had been going on for 14 months, and this was the first time that we had realized that there was somebody behind it, and that she was not just a rebellious teenager, is the way we'd been treating it and thinking what it was. She was a victim, and 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 there was something behind it. Um, I would say that if Scott had not called, the only way he knew was for three girls that were friends of Mackenzie to tell their parents what was happening, and that took a great deal of courage, because Mackenzie had said that she would disown them if any of them told any hint what was going on. But the girls all said the same thing, that we could not live with ourselves if we had not tried to stop her. My encouragement to anybody here and is that it's really important to get involved. We had parents who knew, but we found out later, who knew what was going on,
Oh my gosh. I
and
mean, I can't imagine.
who lived within a quarter mile of us,
Oh
who had
my
been to our
word.
house, and kids had been to our house and
And
chose
kept
not to
that
say
a
anything.
secret. Unbelievable.
And so we were eternally grateful for these three girls. Mackenzie still is good friends with these girls. And in fact, Madison is one of the three. Her wedding is coming up this weekend. Mackenzie is going to be
Aw.
one of her bridesmaids.
Aw.
Um, but um, but without that phone call, we would have lost her. She
Yeah.
would have been gone.
This end of your story would be so different. It would truly be a book of
It would have
tragedy.
been a tragedy.
It would have been.
And
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 that's a
all
good
because of that.
segue actually into the next excerpt that I have
Mhm.
here. And actually, I can hold it up. You can see there is a section, kind of fun in your book, that's got colored pictures that let people, now that we've learned about you. But yeah, the next section's kind of next to that page. And this really does, I think, highlight what the outcome might have been without that
Mhm.
call. We were aware that sex trafficking was a worldwide epidemic that was only getting worse. The International Labor Organization estimates there are 20.9 million victims of human trafficking globally. Of those, 68% were trapped in forced labor, 26% are children, and 55% are women and girls. These victims are trapped in sexual exploitation, in which their captors use violence, threats, lies, debt bondage, and other forms of coercion to force adults and children to engage in commercial sex acts against their will. Amnesty International has identified Kosovo as one of the world's hotbeds for human trafficking, and that's where our daughter wanted to go. Mackenzie had always viewed herself as being worldly and streetwise, but the reality was she was raised in Plano, Texas, and had lived a rather sheltered life. As I imagined what could potentially happen to her if she left, I could feel the dread and grief rise up in my throat.
Mhm. Yeah, I could just all I could picture was her getting off the plane, expecting this good-looking guy to meet her in the tarmac and expecting that's what she's gonna see with this big hug. That's what she was envisioning. But instead, there's somebody else there that puts her in a car and just drives her somewhere completely different and never seen. Take her
It's
passport, and that'd been it. I mean,
it's almost
and
unthinkable, but you have to think it. We have to just discuss it because based on these statistics, there's a whole lot of women and children and people who are falling into these traps. And it's happening in our own backyards. It happens right here. It doesn't always happen in a foreign country. I know I
mhm,
work with a lot of human trafficking nonprofits. I've published books for them.
yeah,
And sometimes they get a little upset when people think, "Oh, it's just foreign," it's the third world countries.
mhm,
No, but the thing is, and what you're showing with your book is that, yes, it happens here in our backyard, but sometimes they're coming from, so far away and just snatching them right out. Even they don't
yeah,
have to live next door to grab them out.
yeah,
So,
and in this case, in our case, and in many cases, they're not grabbing them. She wanted to go.
yeah,
And,
yeah,
so, that's the degree of, manipulation that these guys do with, vulnerable widows
yeah,
or, vulnerable kids,
mhm.
and, because there's money for
Yeah,
'em,
I've been able to publish a book just recently titled From 8,000 Miles by Destiny Dawn, who Harris, whose daughter was in the same situation as Mackenzie. Really, she'd met
Mhm,
someone online in India, and she was actually on the plane headed to India before they found out. And so I know that I am looking forward to having a show, hopefully in the future, where I can bring the two of you to talk about because
mhm,
she had learned about you as she was just stepping off the plane because they had to fly to India to try to rescue their daughter. And she just learned about you and Mackenzie as she was coming back, which I find the timing of that remarkable.
mhm.
Um, but I just and she wrote her book, and reached out to me because she was inspired by your book. And so I think that's an amazing thing. And it
Yeah.
does show that it happens and they leave. And in her case, she actually left.
Yeah, that's right. We were fortunate enough to have somebody tell us,
Mhm.
and, because there's people that knew, and, that could have made a difference with, with Destiny and her family as well.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
were very, very blessed to have friends who were willing to take that chance
Yeah. I
and have
know
the courage to make the call.
in Destiny's case, she didn't know where her daughter was, and she went to her workplace, and all her coworkers knew,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
but nobody thought to tell her. Yeah.
Mhm.
So sadly, I guess it is something that people are not that concerned about, and maybe it really boils down to the fact that we need to be looking out for each other a little more than we do in this world sometimes.
This when Mackenzie's speaking, this is a point that she makes with students is
Mm,
that, to be a true friend, love, love your friend. The worst
yeah.
that could happen if you're wrong is, well, listen, I did it because I loved them and I thought they were in trouble. That's the
Mhm.
worst thing that can happen. So, if she really encourages kids that if you hear something, you don't have to call the parents. Parents just leave a note in a mailbox or tell a
Yeah.
counselor or something. Just get word to them so
Just
they can,
know to do it.
know that something's off.
Yeah. All right, so I have one more, and this is kind of where the help came, I guess you could say. This is where you did something really smart. So I'm going to just read this and let you talk about what you did that
Mhm,
actually managed to rescue her from this. So, Agent Sheridan introduced himself and the other FBI agents to Mackenzie, and with a show of formality, they slid their credentials and business cards in front of her. Mackenzie was quiet and nervous. Sheridan took immediate control of the meeting and explained they were there because during the course of the investigation, her name had come up a few times and they wanted to talk to her about it. He told her the FBI had credible information that she was in contact with a Muslim man who lived in Albania or Kosovo, and that she had even had social media interaction with him. He looked directly at Mackenzie while talking to her, and in a slightly hardened tone, warned her that it was important that she was truthful about everything she had to say to them. Sheridan explained that he and the other agents were going to ask her a lot of questions, some of which they already knew the answers to. He warned her that lying to a federal agent was a criminal offense, punishable by up to 5 years in prison.
Mhm. Yeah, um, this is part of the miracle that we could even get Agent Sheridan in the room with us.
Yeah.
And just like Scott calling, the girls having the courage to come and tell their dads, and the dads calling us, this chain of relationships and miraculous connection, that God worked through a large number of people to put us with Agent Sheridan.
Yeah.
Um,
Amazing.
and it was
Came
a
to
friend
your
of,
home and sat across from her
yeah.
and intimidated the heck out of her, which I know, I actually got to meet him because I was working with Mackenzie, and I think I interviewed him a little bit
Mhm.
too. And I think if I remember right, he was saying, "Well, we kind of let on like we could do more than we actually could." I thought that was interesting, but they
Yeah.
knew how important it
It,
was to get her to take it seriously. So,
it was, the thing that we realized is that we could stop her from leaving once. I
yeah,
mean, we could, there are ways we could stop her. We could take her key away. I could take the battery out of her car. I mean, there was a lot of things we could do to keep her from leaving.
yeah,
But the problem was she wanted to go.
yeah,
And when we realized that she really wanted to do it, then we felt like it was really important that Stephanie and I, my wife and I, keep what we knew a closely guarded secret
mm,
for these few weeks.
which had to have
So
been
Mackenzie
so
didn't
hard to
know that
do.
we knew, but it allowed us to a few days that we could work on this, and that's how we were able to get in with Agent Sheridan through a large number of people connecting us.
Mhm.
Um, so the intervention was supposed to be a scared straight. Um,
And it worked,
it
thankfully.
kind of worked.
Kinda worked. Yeah. No,
We wanted her to say, "Oh, we really expected for her to walk away." It's like, "Oh my gosh!" I mean, she's so rattled. I'm gonna break it off with him tomorrow,
yeah,
and it was enough to convince her. I don't want to go to Kosovo, but
mm,
it was enough to convince her that he was a perpetrator.
yeah,
Because
that
then the battle shifted from me going there to I want you to bring him to me,
mm.
and that started a whole nother series of things that we had to fight through until
Yeah,
Agent Sheridan was finally able to convince her that this guy does not have your best interest at heart. He's here to help. He's here for his own. He's here for himself, not for you.
yeah.
And and once she was finally able to realize that, then
Yeah,
she was able to
and it
break it
took
off.
time, which is understandable because so much time was invested in winning her over
Mhm,
and getting her to think what she did that it's understandable. I think I've seen something that sometimes you can't wake people up too quick to things because it will just leave them confused.
mhm,
And I think that's really true in many situations where somebody might be blind to something. You can't just like force their eyes open and have them instantly understand what they're seeing. It does take time. But definitely getting the FBI agents involved was a stroke of brilliance and miracle, I'm sure.
mhm.
Not just that
And
he was
and
there,
listen,
but how well he handled it was
he did
very.
it
Mhm.
as much as a father as an FBI agent. There wasn't he found a way and
Yeah.
went and got permission to work with us because
Mhm.
he knew he could, there was something he might do. And so
His
we
heart was in it to
owe
really
him
save her, and
we owe a lot of people her life.
yeah,
And he was a
isn't that
big part of
amazing?
that. But he was a great man and a great dad and a good friend. And um, everything he did helped us, and we can't thank him enough. And so
Yeah, that's wonderful.
that intervention was a very, very important piece of us being able to move her away from this danger.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and he stayed with us until she was safe.
yeah.
And it's he's a great man, and But listen, it was a miracle to get him there. And of all the people, this one man is who we got led to, who is willing to say, I'm going to help you.
So my next question for you now is, how did you come up with the title and the cover of your book?
Mm, yeah,
Mhm,
that's a good question. As I was thinking about what to title it, I like the repetition of numbers.
mhm,
And so as I was considering, I was like, well, we had 25 days, we had three friends, we had, and so that cadence of 25 days and one chance.
mhm.
The original title was 25 days, three friends and one chance to save our daughter.
Ooh,
The Almost Gone came in a little bit later. Our publisher, they suggested we shorten it to Almost Gone, 25
yeah,
days and one chance.
yeah.
So that's the title actually came together fairly quickly. I put it out there, and my wife was like, "Oh, I don't know," and I said, "We'll come up with something better." Nothing could knock
Nobody
it
can.
off the hill, so that's what we end up with. And
I
I
like it
really
because
thought the publisher might
it's
change it, but
short.
they liked it too.
They liked it too. Yeah, so you had the perfect one. It's
Yeah.
short, it's catchy, it's intriguing, it's accurate, it's all those things in 2 words. It's quite amazing actually to convey all that in just a couple of words.
The cover, uh, our original idea was to put a jet departing, was our
Mhm.
initial thought for this. And some of our early designs were that. The publisher was looking through pictures, and they asked me what I thought about this picture that we landed with, because this picture is Mackenzie's high school graduation. This picture was actually taken only 4 days after that intervention with the FBI. We were right
Wow,
in the middle of all this.
wow.
It literally was,
Mm.
she was planning to leave on Saturday. We stopped her on the Wednesday before that Saturday, and this picture was taken on that day that she was, I think on the Monday after that she was supposed to leave. I mean, and you can, we're there and it's all smiles, but it was just all kinds of chaos going on below the surface.
Yeah.
And when we were working with our publisher, and we were explaining, the timing of that picture and how it was just right smack in the middle of the crisis. Um, she goes, this is the one we need to use, because it's it's a happy family on the surface, and but there was all kinds of things going on below the surface. And
I think it's important for people to realize that because I think it speaks to life and how we should give each other grace because we may all look just fine. We have no idea what might be going on in the life of somebody. And yeah, like you said, it just looks like this perfect mother and father with their graduate and like like everything is just how it should be at this moment, and yet underneath it was she was almost gone. I'm
yeah.
going to confess that I did know about the original book cover idea. I think you and I
Hmm.
talked about it.
Hmm.
And so when I worked with Destiny Harris, or Destiny Dawn is what's on the cover of her book, we actually used that concept for her book.
Hmm.
And I'm grateful for that because I think it fits her book really well because her daughter actually did get on that
Got
plane
on the plane.
and
Yeah.
fly, and her title's from 8,000 miles. So I feel like it was really fitting. So I'm glad that you went with the cover that you did for all those reasons. And I'm glad that we were able to use the idea to this story that's really closely tied to yours. All right. So I'm going to ask you the last question, which is what advice do you have for aspiring authors that have important story to share like you have?
Yeah, I love this. I love this question because not a um, I mean, I'm just computer programmer and a project manager. In my career, but I like to write, and I thought that I thought I could write pretty well. It was something I always liked to do. So I have four things that I would like to that think about this question. First, I would say be patient, because it takes a long time to write a book. Um, I created with Melanie's help, but anyone should do this. Is just wrote an outline of the way that I thought it should go, and kind of worked off that outline. And there were a lot of sections that I would write and read it and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite. So it just takes a lot of time, and so so go into it knowing that it needs to be a work of passion, and just keep working on it until you get it to where you want it to be. So be patient and just know that it's a long-term investment of time and energy to do it. The second thing that I learned in this was to not stress so much on the details. The details are important to tell the story, but I felt like it was more important to be able to express the feelings and the emotions that we were going through in our story. Because it was the details of the book, and there's a lot of drama, and it's a lot of it's very compelling. But if I wasn't able to convey the feelings that we were feeling, the fear or the despair or the sadness or the anger or whatever it was, I didn't feel like you were really getting the story. So when I would write a chapter, I would give it to Stephanie, and I would want to get the facts right. But my first question to her is, can you feel what we are feeling? I mean, are you really feeling this? And whenever she could do that, and it was grabbing her in a way that, then I knew that that was where we needed it to be. And then we were able to the details of it, and there were a lot,
Mhm.
but sometimes you can get so many details that you get focused on the details and not and miss the human side of it.
Mhm.
And I tried not to let the facts override the feeling, because I felt like they were equally important. So I would say anyone that's, any new authors, the facts are important, but think about what you're experiencing, and then try to write from that emotion that's there,
Mhm.
and really think about it. So what that meant for me was I couldn't just pick a time to write anytime I wanted. I couldn't just say, well, I'm going to write, from 8 to 10 in the morning,
Mm.
because when I did that, because I was extremely busy in my job. I mean, a lot of times
Yeah.
I was writing at 4 in the morning because that was the only time I had. But if I I couldn't just say, well, I'm gonna spend all day Saturday writing. And when I did that, it's like, well, I'm just gonna write, because it was kind of like an assignment. It always came out wooden,
Mm.
and very very fact based, very work sounding. you know?
Right. Yes.
And so I just decided I would just write. I would just write when I felt like it, and if I didn't feel like writing, I just didn't.
Hmm.
Mm, and sometimes that was frustrating because you wanted to do it, but it was just it was very very hard for me to write. I could put words down, but they weren't good. It was much better when I felt like it. And the last point was, to that
Yeah.
same point, I didn't try to write it in order. So I would just write what I felt like I wanted to write about. And
Mhm.
so I didn't start from the beginning, just go from end to end. I would just, if I was right and I was thinking about the FBI meeting and just what I felt like, I would, I think that's maybe what I wrote first, was that section.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because that's what meant most to me. And then so it was just kind of put together. And then when we were look at the outline, it's like, oh, I got to fill in these gaps
Yeah.
that's there. But
That's
I
such
think
great
that,
advice, and the fact that you might have written about the ending first, and I
mhm,
know you would write and then you'd email it to me, and we could read it and kind of so I think it's good to have somebody to read and come back to you and say, "Hey, this is really interesting. Can you develop this more or that more?" Because sometimes you get it down, and then another person can come and help where a reader would want more information. And so, yeah.
yeah, that would be. I think those for a new writer, and just just pick it up and just start doing it. So don't feel like you just got to do it all at the same time,
Mhm.
because it's really important to write it and to get your story done. So and it could be a lot of fun. And if you just kind of make it, that passion, I think that you get a lot more out of it.
Mhm.
Um, the the facts part of the book is, harder. I mean, when we went to Simon Schuster, they had a fact checker check it, and the first time they came back, I mean, they kind of did a grammatical thing. They found 2,000 syntax errors in it. We had to go back and do it.
Wow.
It took a long time to get that part of it set out,
Yeah,
but they really, but it was the feeling. I think that's what brings quality to it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So people like yourself who are really good at this help amateurs like us get through it. So,
Yeah. Well, it's good to have it could be a family member, a friend, just somebody to give you feedback as you're writing, I think, helps keep you motivated. A little bit of accountability maybe too.
mhm.
You definitely wanted this to be a book, um, but you reached out so that you would have that kind of that, outside help to keep you focused and I don't know. I You didn't appear to struggle that much with trying to write, I'll be honest. I think I'm sure there were days you didn't feel like it, and so you didn't do it, but you
Mhm.
still stayed on top of it. I'm gonna say that. It wasn't like it drug out for long periods. So I
Well,
think
on
once
Mackenzie's side, it was harder for her,
yeah.
because she doesn't necessarily like to write. And when we first started the book, you were working with her very heavily,
Mhm.
and helping her. Um, but as we went on in the book, we got into the project, and she began to realize how important it was.
Yeah.
And I would just really encourage her to say, "Look," I would read it, and it's like you got to dig deeper. I
Yeah.
mean,
Open
and
up, share more of the
I said,
details
"I
and
know it's scary."
yeah.
And there were times I was writing this, and for nonfiction especially, I think this is important.
Mm.
There were times that I would have it. I was like, "Oh my gosh, do I really, really want to put this in here?"
That's a good
and and
point.
and
Sometimes you gotta just
Mackenzie,
be
and
vulnerable.
listen, much more for Mackenzie than for me. I mean,
Yeah.
the courage it took for her to do this, I just cannot say enough of what it took for a 18-year-old kid to put her whole life out on paper like
Yeah.
that for the
Yeah, it's
world.
something that she shouldn't be
And
embarrassed by it, but it could, could be perceived that way at first. Just say, "Oh, I almost
yeah,
did this terrible thing, and people had to rescue me," but I think it's so great that she has saved lives, I'm sure. She really has.
I know
So
she has.
I hope she appreciates or can recognize how valuable her
I
effort
think over the
really
years
is.
now, I think she does. And
Yeah,
but
yeah,
her selling in to write it got better and better,
yeah,
as we got into the project. And
yeah,
some of her writing is absolutely beautiful, and very touching. So
yeah,
that would be my advice. Just be authentic
yeah.
and
Be vulnerable, put it down.
mhm.
I love that.
Mackenzie now, Melanie is married,
Oh,
and she actually pursued a career as a police officer, and was on patrol for 4 years and helped many runaways,
wow,
that were,
wow.
you know, girls that were rebelled or, left home, and she would spend a lot of time with them.
It's amazing.
And from her experience, she could sit down with them, and she would sit next to these runaway girls for in uniform for a long time. And these girls would look at her, it's like, you can't possibly understand what this means. She goes, give me a shot. But she could relate to them, and she was very vulnerable, and so she did help many girls in that capacity. um,
Yeah.
and she's left the police force now. Now she's pursuing a career as an airline pilot.
A
So
pilot. Mhm.
always the adventurer.
She is, and that's a whole other part of your story we didn't really get to talk about, but,
Yeah.
you had a lot of adventures together, and you were a tight father-daughter team, before all this happened, and so but I'm so glad to see she's doing so well and making such a difference. It's just great to have you on the show, I really appreciate it.
So much fun. Thank you. And anytime. Appreciate it.